I'll do it. And we, all of us, are back. We got a stacked house here on the morning show today. Obviously, I'm still here, Mike's still here, but joining us, of course, not an unfamiliar face at this table, Sandra Smith.
Well, I want to say thank y'all for letting me come on your show today because I would not miss it. When Congressman Walter Jones is on the show, I'm going to be here. He's my congressman, and I just love him to death. And he's so humble. He would just, he's so humble. But anyway, I do love Congressman Jones, and we're so glad that he's here today.
All right, thank you very much, Congressman Jones, for showing up. You are the member of Congress from the 3rd Congressional District here in North Carolina, and that does encompass some of, but oddly enough, not all of Rocky Mount. We've used it 1,000 times to show how is Rocky Mount in 3, but we're gonna leave it at that.
Well, I want to thank you and Mike and Sandra. Has been a friend, Herb, for a long time, and always enjoyed coming on the show. And you guys do a great job. And the people that watch the show, I always say, let's tell the truth. Let's be honest. Sometimes that hurts, but let's tell it the way it is because this country is in deep, deep trouble. So I'm delighted to be on the show with you and Mike, and certainly Sandra as well.
Right, we should always tell the truth, if only because it's the easiest thing to remember.
Absolutely, right. Cameron. Absolutely.
We've covered all the bad news. We've got you here now for the good part.
Well, maybe I shouldn't have be on the show today. I believe in hope. I believe in the future of this country, but we've got to make some tough decisions now for that to be hope for the future.
Tell us what's on your mind, particularly with this new Congress.
Well, Mike, it's a very interesting beginning, I'll say that. But we had to, for too long, we have tried to kick the can down the road. That's an old saying we all know. And now it's time to stop kicking the can down the road because we do not have the luxury. I am not an isolationist, but I'm a Pat Buchanan American. I'm sick and tired of taking care of the world. I had an amendment on the floor during this debate of 400 amendments. My amendment said we would reduce the Afghan infrastructure fund of $400 million. And during the debate, I said, how can I go back to my district and tell the leaders in the different counties that I represent that we have no money for your infrastructure, but we've got $400 million for Afghanistan.
Isn't that something?
It's crazy. It's crazy. And plus, in the bill, I didn't vote. I was one of 3 Republicans voted against the bill, quite frankly. My main reason was not only the Afghan infrastructure fund, I can't get it out this morning, but $120 billion for Afghanistan. $120 billion.
And
who is paying for that? The Chinese.
And they're gonna execute 2 Afghan citizens for converting to Christianity. Now it's not crazy, Congressman. It's criminal.
Thank you, Mike. I would tell you that to me, I go back to Pat Buchanan. To me, when this country is suffering so much, we got people right here in Nash County without jobs. Many people looking for jobs, and they just aren't there. It's time for somebody to get to be the President of the United States and say for the next 4 years, unless we are attacked, if we are attacked, we're going to go up there and we're going to bomb them, we're going to send drones, we're going to send killer squads, but we're not sending 100,000 troops. It's time that we start rebuilding America.
Amen.
I agree. And it looks to me like this new Congress, just pointing out some records here, they cut $61 billion out of that continuing resolution budget before you've even got to your first year budget.
Right.
And they did it with a 52 vote plurality. It wasn't a late night 2 vote margin. This thing is starting to build some momentum. And I'm taking some hope in that.
Well, no, I think, again, I told you my reasons for not voting for it. It was simply because I just get sick and tired of people. I mean, I will tell you and your viewers that I go to Walter Reed and Bethesda on a regular basis. I want to be reminded, because I didn't go to war for this country, I didn't serve, but I want to be reminded of the pain of war.
Yeah.
When you see those legs blown off, you see those who are paralyzed, you see the mom sitting in there or the dad or the wife. And one story very quickly. 6 weeks ago, I go to Walter Reed, and I've been escorted by Major Mack. I never will forget her. And before I go in the room, she tells me that this young private is named Corey Kent. Never will forget him either. 22, has no body parts below his waist. Those of you watching this show, think about your waist and nothing below it. 22 years old. And I don't know how we're going to take care of our wounded and our veterans for the next 15 or 20 years. It's already been projected by Dr. Joe Stiglitz and Linda Williams. They co-authored the book, The $3 Trillion War. They testified in November, and I was invited by Bob Filner, who's was chairman, he's a Democrat of the Veterans Health Committee. They testified, and they said today, if they wrote the book 4 years later, it would be titled The $6 Trillion War. This country is not prepared for it. And we need to stop fighting police the world. Let's be honest about it. We need to fix our own country and stop worrying about everybody else.
All right, it seems to me
That's
that
exactly
we're
right.
stuck in a post-World War II mentality of America's role in the world. When we sort of made a trade-off. We'll defend Western civilization as long as y'all push back against communism with us. But communism's gone, those threats are gone, and now we're still stuck with defending the Western world. And I happen to think Germany and France and the United Kingdom and Italy and the other parts of the West are perfectly capable of chipping in and defending themselves against their aggressors. So
Congressman,
foreign
you
adventure
mentioned-
is proving to be way too costly for a country that's $14 trillion in debt.
Well, Cameron, most people that I'm seeing, I've been several speeches lately. You know, I was in Dare County a couple of weeks ago and spoke to a military group called MOA, and they had about 45 or 50 retired military officers. And when I said I am for getting our troops out of Afghanistan, I got a strong applause.
That's amazing.
I bet you did.
Right, you mentioned
I bet you
you're
did.
a Pat Buchanan type, and several years ago, Mr. Buchanan wrote a book called A Republic, Not an Empire. And there's some controversial stuff in that book, but the title, I think, is something maybe we should take to heart. We should be a peaceful republic that will do business in the world openly, honestly, open friendship with all, but not the policeman.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
We're going to Kansas call. That's weird. You are on the morning show. What can we do for you on this misty morning?
It still is.
Hello?
They had the wrong number.
Oh, it was a Kansas call.
Okay.
No.
How many constituents do you have in Kansas?
I don't know. We got quite a few calls when we have been doing 5-minute speeches and saying that it's time to get out of
Leave that
Afghanistan. I doubt if that's the one, but we agree. It's just time that I love this country. You love this country, and I hate to see us going down, following history in a decline that so many nations never came back out of.
It always starts with spending.
Yep, it does.
It always
exactly.
starts with spending, and then you get to this overreach, and at some point you pass the point of no return, and it's going to happen. And I don't think we've gotten there yet. Fortunately, our economy is exceptionally strong, but even a $14+ trillion economy can only take so much strength.
We're at a crossroads, I think, personally. Excuse me for interrupting, but I think that we're at a crossroads, and either we're going to make the right decisions for our children's future, or we're not, and therefore they won't have the future we would dream of.
Yeah, you look at Washington, you look at what's going on in some of the states. We're talking about Wisconsin earlier. It does seem that things seem to be coming to a head. You have opposing
Congressman,
forces.
when you talk to your counterparts, the other side, and I'm going to be generous and say that a liberal is a well-intentioned person.
Sure.
Are they realizing that we cannot continue down the path that we're on, or that they're still in a denial stage or something?
Mike, they are more realistic now than they've ever been.
That's-
I'm going to be honest about it. Of course, they still have, many of them have different philosophies than what we have.
Yeah.
But I think the Congress is awakened to the fact that we're headed for a train wreck. And that includes the Democrats, too.
Okay, that's good news. Because, we talked about it off camera a little bit. For years, I'm an ex-military man, and
Right.
yet I was told that I have to be for every military request, or somehow my patriotism is questioned. When can a conservative be against an unholy war? And I think we're starting to see some of. You mentioned they applauded you when you said get out of Afghanistan.
Yep.
A couple of years ago, you had some people down in the Jacksonville area going after you, and it's only
Absolutely.
because they didn't understand.
Well, I don't know if y'all saw last week in The Guardian, and I wouldn't have seen it if my staff hadn't pulled it, where Curveball admitted that he intentionally lied to the Bush administration to get us in war. If you haven't, I would suggest last Wednesday or Thursday, go on the Guardian website.
Yeah.
Right.
And Colin Powell came out the next day. I've asked for an investigation,
Yeah.
quite frankly. Colin Powell came out the next day, and he was incensed that he had been given that kind of information by a man that's now said he intentionally lied to the American
Oh,
people.
my goodness.
And
I
our
want
kids
to
go to
read
die.
that.
Yeah, I will get my staff to email that as soon as I get back
Please.
in the car, and y'all might want to chat about that at some point in time. And I've actually talked to Dennis Kucinich. We don't agree on much, but that's one thing we do agree on. American people have a right to know the truth when we send the sons and daughters to die.
That got
Just
you
like
on,
Vietnam.
yeah, that got you on a list, Dennis Kucinich, but I certainly admired you for standing there with him. But that certainly
Well,
got you some recognition.
I think we agree that Dennis and I agree. If you're going to war, let's do what the Constitution says. Let's declare war.
Absolutely.
Let's stop these resolutions, be Democrat or Republican. Let's just stop them.
Yeah, I've read the Constitution several times, and I've never seen anything in Article 1, Section 8 about an authorization to use force. I see
It's a
declare-
declaration.
And I see several military powers in Article 1, Section 8, and one little throwaway line about Commander-in-Chief in Article 2. I see most of the war-making powers in Congress, not in the executive branch, and I would be very pleased if Congress were to reclaim some of those.
Well, we
You-
neutered ourselves is what we've done, and that goes back before I got to Congress.
Oh, it goes back to Truman.
Yeah,
You know, that Constitution says, it doesn't say the president's commander-in-chief.
No, it says he shall
It
be
says
commander.
he shall be when
Right.
called to serve. I mean,
when the armed forces are called by Congress. So he's not all. Anyway,
yeah. But,
that's just a matter of interpretation. And
I used to have sympathy with that congressman from Ohio that went to prison, wild
Trafficant.
guy with all the white
Jim
hair.
Trafficant, yeah.
Because he was a patriot.
Beat
beat me up, Mr. Speaker.
But among other things.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that was a sad night when we had to vote to censure
Yeah.
him because he is a good man
Yeah.
and he made a serious mistake that
Yeah.
obviously served time in jail, but quite a character.
Yeah, I was there. I was on Capitol Hill in a tour group in January of '03. I was watching the speaker vote, and he voted for Hastert, if not
Yeah.
Gephardt. And
Yeah.
he was punished for that, as I recall, by the Democrats. But he was always a colorful.
But you
colorful
get
character.
punished many times for doing what you think's right.
Right.
I not a subcommittee chairman. I should be. I got the seniority, but because of my position in getting out of Afghanistan, and the chairman, who I think the world of, Buck McKeon, is for staying there. So you know, but you still function. You still can get some things done for your people. So.
Congressman, tell us some other things that are going on. You've got some newcomers in Congress, and are they feeling their way okay? Is everything?
Yeah, I really, recently I know that Mr. Butterfield and Ms. Elmers and I represent Nash
Right,
County.
that's right.
3 representatives. But I saw Congresswoman Elmers on the floor last week. I thought she did a mighty fine job.
Good.
She spoke with authority. She was talking about the health care. It was an amendment. I can't remember the amendment. But anyway, I was very proud of her. I thought she did a very fine job, and I think the people of her district would have been proud if they had stayed up to 1, 2 o'clock in the
Right,
morning and
goodness
watched it. But,
gracious, yeah.
Well, along that line, is there a lot of intercommunication, say, between the North Carolina Republican delegation and your Democratic colleagues in North Carolina? Do you guys get together as Tar Heelians and talk about common issues?
Mike, not officially. Some states do. Texas does. I know their delegation, both Republican and Democrat, which you asked, get together. We just never, since I've been in Congress, Mr. Coble now is our dean of our delegation, and we from time to time will have a delegation meeting, but generally speaking, not on a regular basis. Some do, and they say it works pretty well. Some thinks it's just I hate to say it, but a waste of time. But Mr. Coble says that when he thinks it's something important that we get together, then he'll call us. And but generally, we communicate with each other.
Right.
Many times, Mr. Butterfield's office is right around the corner. I have to walk around the corner to get on the elevator. So there are times that we're on the elevator going down to vote together, and we chat. And but, I mean, the delegation is pretty cordial. I mean, obviously we have different political philosophies, but pretty pretty cordial.
That's what I was wondering, because now like Renee is brand new, and she's gonna need the big brothers, and I didn't
Right.
know if it was Coble or McHenry or
Right.
Jones, who takes her under the wing and brings her along.
Well, you know, in fact, the first 30 days really was reminded me of 1995 when I went there with Newt Gingrich. At that time was the largest class, I think, 53 or 54. And just like Renee's class, which is 86 or 87, that's a huge class. The first 30 days is not a normal time because we had the continuation. And we voted at Saturday morning at 4:41. I cast my no vote, got in my car, drove to my apartment. I remember vividly until the day I died that I looked at the clock. It was 5:03, and I got up at 7:15 and drove home. So we all were.
Now, what did you do between 5 o'clock and 7:03?
I think I snored, but nobody said. I was there by myself, so I can't verify that. But I don't think I turned. But you know, it's one of those years that American people spoke in November, and they just want to have hope and dreams for their children. And right now, they don't have it, and I don't have it either, quite frankly. So we've got to change a lot of the ways we do. The one thing that somebody asked me yesterday, spoke to a group, and I said, well, how would you try to get a handle on this debt? What I'd like to see is 2 rounds. The first round would be across-the-board cuts for everybody. I don't know if that should be 3%, 4%, 2%, 5%. I don't know.
24% maybe.
But straight across, everybody, DOD included. Then, after you have a chance to evaluate those cuts, come back with a second round. And if there's an area that needs deeper cuts, then make them. But this process, I'm not going to fault it because we had to keep the government running, but it's going to take a few days to figure out exactly what we did do. And,
Well, speaking of got to keep the government running.
You're
what
talking
do
about the 400 Amendment process?
yeah,
Okay.
I think it was 5, I'm not sure.
But what do you think about the prospects of the government shutting down sometime in the near future?
Cameron, I think that Mr. Boehner and Eric Cantor and the leadership of the House right now talking about the majority of the new members, and I'm not speaking for them, let me make that clear, but my observation is, and some of us older members like Ron Paul and myself and a few others, we want to see an option, but that option be a guarantee that you cannot break the guarantee before we're going to vote to continue to fund the government. They're working on that now. I don't know what it's going to be. What I heard this morning driving to the show was that they might just go with a 2 or 3 week continuing resolution and see what we can work out. But the key that is going to be the key vote will be the raising of the debt limit. In the last 8, 9, 10 years of 4 terms, 5 terms, I have not voted to raise the debt ceiling, even when my party was in charge, which it is now, because all I see is that is a blank check for the government to borrow more money from foreign governments. And I think at some point you have to say it's got to stop. Yeah. So we'll see what
We've
they're going to
reached that
offer.
point. Thank you, Congressman.
I
you're
saw,
right.
and I said on
My household budget's beyond that.
Well, I know when I shop for my family, everything I buy, my wife gives me the grocery list, everything's a little bit smaller but higher in cost. I know
Right.
that.
Well, yeah, I remember I read a few weeks ago that at some point in the very near future, 2015, 2016, maybe 2020, we're going to be paying to China an interest on the debt that they owe more than they pay on their military. And so we're essentially, the American taxpayers, essentially going to be funding the Chinese military.
Well, all of you know, and majority of those watching this show, that any nation that has to borrow money to keep its doors open is not a strong nation.
No.
It's not a world leader.
Exactly.
And I think the Chinese, Secretary of Defense Gates had a visit to the Chinese military leadership a couple, 3 weeks ago, and I think I can say this carefully. I don't think he was treated as well as he could have been if we didn't owe him any money. Truthfully. Yeah. They were not rude to him, but I could tell from reading the articles, and you might have read them too, that it was not quite an eye, looking you straight in the eye as I am Sandra right now. I think the Chinese are looking at you, meaning we, the American people.
Right.
You owe me money.
Well, I think when the Chinese president came over here, he was looking around at what he might have to repossess.
Yeah, I said,
Mike, I hate to laugh, but I think you're probably right.
He was probably looking at the
had that
Washington landlord look. He was probably looking at the Washington Monument thinking, that would look great in my front yard.
I guess it's good that we can laugh, because if we didn't, we'd cry, so therefore.
Well, we do
we
some
can-
of both.
We can work out of it if we just do what, it's just like I'd like to say to your listeners, I wish you would contact Senator Byrd and Senator Hagan and say, get our troops out of Afghanistan.
I do constantly.
I really do.
Well, I have three. I didn't want me to just jump in, but I have three questions that I've always told myself that if I'm ever in proximity to a member of Congress, I must ask these three questions.
Don't
So-
make them tough.
No, they're not. No, they're not tough. They're simply yes or no answers.
Okay.
And if you want to elaborate on them, you feel free to. First question: are you in favor of a germaneness rule in the House, where everything in a bill must be related to that bill? So if it's a
Yes.
defense bill, you can't throw in something else.
Yeah. That's one of the worst problems up there, Cameron, is I don't know how many people in the last several years that I've said, if your issue is a standalone vote and they don't make a Christmas tree out of it, I might vote for it. But when they start making a Christmas tree out of it, it might be an issue that I sincerely believe is the right thing to do. But when they load it up with, I call it
yeah,
pork
I hate
marrow.
that. I hate
They
that.
say add-ons, which is pork marrow. Yet, I think it should deal simply with the subject matter, and that's it.
Well, the DCCP is eating Renee Elmer's up right now.
What?
The
The D-
DC, the Democratic,
The DCCC.
What does she,
yeah,
I'm not
Democratic
familiar.
Congressional
Congressional
Campaign Committee.
Every day I
DCCC.
get an email, and every single day, I mean, it's on a daily basis that they're sending these mass emails. It's only on Renee Elmer's, and they're saying, can you believe she voted for this?
And it's the Christmas.
You're not
tree.
realizing that it's coupled in there with all the, well, not coupled, it's in there with all these other bills. And so we need to start, we've got to
Well-
start, Mike, what can we do
Well,
to dispel all of
I'm
this?
glad you brought that up today. Today exactly is the 1-year anniversary of the Tar River Tea Party, which
Is that
started
right?
in my living room.
Happy birthday
One
to
year
you.
ago today. Well, I'm afraid
Wanna
I'm
sing
going to
it,
sing
that's
Happy
a-
Birthday Friday on their
Yeah, on the
Silver
Friday
County
show, they
yes.
do happy birthdays.
But
He's going
we,
to demand they sing happy birthday.
We played a role in putting Renee in, and we're going to play a role in keeping her there and adding to her
Well, you need to
strength.
start writing to this DCCC.
Well, no, I tell you the truth, both parties have a program to go after new members,
Yeah.
and the Democrats just don't have very many new members, so that's the problem. But I think the more that any freshman, including Renee, I have a lot of respect for her and like her family, needs to be on shows like this. And
Right.
you can't address everything, but get a chance to. But I mean,
Dilute some of it.
right, and I think, again, I tell people all the time in the district, you know, give us to about June. If you don't like what we're doing by June, then threaten us all, kick us out, whatever.
Right.
But give us a few months, because, and I'm saying this for the freshmen as well as myself, but primarily the freshmen. I mean, it is, if this was easy times, good times, I wouldn't even be making this statement. You wouldn't even be saying this
Right.
today. But these are tough times. And give that member of Congress 5 or 6 months. And then, if you're not happy, say I'm not happy.
Right.
But the first 60 days, it's not fair.
Good,
Okay.
I'm
But
glad you
politics
said
is not
that.
fair anyway.
No,
Be
it's
honest about
not.
that.
You know,
But I'm glad
last
you
night they
said
were
that.
getting on Renee for the Patriot Act vote, which was
Yeah.
an incorrect vote,
It's-
and I wrote them and said, give her,
Yeah.
I didn't
Give
say
her some
June, but I
time.
said, give her some rope and let
These
her
people aren't going
learn.
to give her anything.
Right.
So what we've got to do is, like Congressman
Yeah.
said, we're going to have her on the show. I spoke with her chief of
Do
staff
you have
this
any
morning,
input
so-
into the redistricting?
No, that'll be strictly state.
State,
And,
yeah.
I mean, can you express your desire?
Oh, yeah,
to
no,
it
no,
yet?
no, they will, at some point in time, the committee that will handle the congressional redistricting, they will show us the maps, they will, you know, want to know our views, and obviously, but the legislature will make the final decision. But what we did in Washington on the Republican side, we designated Patrick Henry to be our spokesman to the state redistricting committee, or the congressional redistricting committee, because he had been in the state senate, and he is very, very knowledgeable on redistricting. I mean, we've had a couple of meetings in Mr. Coble's office. Renee's been there, and Patrick has given us an update as to how things are going. And So as they draw the maps, then we'll get a chance, and actually both parties, to look at the map.
All right.
But we're not there yet. It's probably March, April.
Speaking of redistricting, that brings me to my second question.
Okay.
Do you favor increasing the number of members of the House of Representatives?
No, not at this point.
Not at this point? Okay.
No,
that's
not
fine.
at this point. I like the way it's based on population. I regret it for some of my friends from New Jersey. They've lost a seat. But I think that I would hate to see the numbers increase for this reason. If it's justified based on population, I'd feel differently. But it's somewhat of a dysfunctional system, to tell you the truth. And I guess you can say, well, but, and I will say, well, but it does work. But the more people you get there, I mean, it's just like,
You go from a gang to a mob.
well, it does. Mike's right for this standpoint. I would tell you very quickly that many of us in both parties have working on this H-2B program to increase the numbers that could come in here legally and work and go back home, for many of our industries, our farmers included. But the caucus, the Hispanic caucus, says no. If you don't give us comprehensive reform, we're not going to vote for this piecemeal type changes. So that doesn't really answer your question or give an example, but I think right now the numbers are fine. If states increase in population, then they should have another member of Congress.
All right. So going from 435 to 600, it would be. All right, last question.
It would be horrible.
Yeah, last question. What about, this is one of the things that, well, what about maybe returning, this would be obviously require another change to the Constitution, returning the composition of the Senate to the state legislatures?
U.S. senators used to be chosen by the legislatures and not by the people.
No.
I think that would.
I love it.
I think that would prevent a lot of the unfunded mandates, things passed down onto the states. I think it would control a lot of spending.
It would cut all these lawsuits out with states are suing the federal government. See, the senator used to represent the state government. The congressman represented you and I.
Right.
Today, there's no difference between them except he serves longer.
Yeah, that's true.
It's an interesting
I
question.
think
and it's
Well,
still here.
I think you, ladies and gentlemen, are more in a philosophical mode on some of these issues.
Oh, I'm allowed to be. I don't have to make hard choices. I don't have to make the hard choices.
I would say that if we were beginning the country over again, that might not be bad. I don't see how it can change. The only way you're going to change Washington, quite frankly, is to change the way we finance campaigns. And I'm not for pure public financing, but I'm telling you, it's out of control. Each one of us has to raise money from political action committees. Now, do I think that political action committees make decisions? I'd say no, I don't. But it creates an environment that is seen by the public of those members in Congress in both parties, House and Senate, are paid for by the special interests. That's not good. But it won't change in my lifetime. I'm not saying it will ever change. But, you know, I put a bill in the state legislature that still is the law, that during this long session they cannot hold fundraisers. They cannot hold fundraisers in Raleigh. And that was a bill I put in the early 90s, and so far it's not been taken out. And they can still have fundraisers, but they're not going to have them in Raleigh. And you say, well, what's the benefit of that? Well, you know, I don't know, but the perception of the people is that when they're in Raleigh during this long session, they're up there to work. And they still have receptions, don't get me wrong, for members, and they do in Washington. But anyway, that's just my belief.
You almost have to start raising funds the day after the election, don't you, for the next
Absolutely.
one? Yeah.
Let me tell you, these freshmen in both parties, I guarantee you the first week, the leadership of the Republican Party and Democrats Party is saying, you need to be in the RNC or the DNC raising money right now. Truthfully.
That's what your Democrat group was getting on Renee, is she had a fundraiser when she went to Washington.
Well, they all do it, and we do too. I mean, I do too. So,
Some people say $10,000 a day. I think I've heard something along those lines. But it's
So you go to RNC and sit at a phone bank, is that what you do?
Well, they have several phone banks. It might be several hundred, I'm not sure. I've never counted, but yeah, they do. That's right. You can't make any political calls out of your office.
Yeah.
So, what you do is you go to the DNC and the RNC, and both headquarters are within a couple blocks of the Capitol. And you know, Dan Burton and I were on 60 Minutes 4 or 5 years ago, and Steve Croft interviewed us, and I never will forget, I told him that when we voted on the Bush administration's Medicare prescription drug Part D bill,
Oh, goodness.
that we walked to the, it's kind of like this past week, but there weren't that many lobbyists this past week, but there must have been one and a half to 2 lobbyists for every one member walking in. And, excuse me, and I was one of 25 to vote no on that. And I said
Well, thank you for that.
on Steve Croft's show, I said,
Thanks for trying.
it was like political Sodom and Gomorrah. It was just horrible. They kept that vote open to about 6:15 in the morning.
Wow.
So twisting a lot of arms.
Right.
That's when the Republicans had the House, the Senate, and the presidency.
Right. And
Congressman Jones, how's the best way for just a rank and file constituent of yours to express his opinion to you? And have a chance that you'll get it instead of a staff, or will staff
I would
always
say
get it
either
first?
call
Yeah.
or fax or write a letter. I know that's
Yeah.
old-timey thinking, but the emails come in, and even though we only respond to those that have the zip code that we know
Yeah.
in our district, you still, when the staff's getting 100 emails
Right.
and maybe 25 are from the district, you got to still go through the other 75 to say I'm not going
Qualify,
to. Yeah. I think, I don't know how any new member, they all into all these computers and everything, but my father taught me retail politics is the best politics. Be out there with the people. Be accessible. We were closed yesterday. I had 3 meetings in the office. You know, I didn't have any staff, but I just sit and knock on the door and I open the door.
Right.
I do that because I need a lot of downtime to read myself, quite frankly.
Well, I want to say that Congressman Jones is very accessible. He has always been accessible as long as I've known him, and I do appreciate that. And I do appreciate him being on this program. And I also want to say that I did not call Congressman Jones. We normally do. We do call him when we need him, but want him to come about a specific thing. But he called us. I want to say that. And to me, that means a lot, doesn't it, Mike?
Yes.
That he called me and Herb and asked, could he come? Now, that means so much. That tells you the character, the integrity of the congressman, that he wants to talk to you, his constituents. He wants to let you know what is going on in Washington. And gosh, we need so many more like you. I wish we
Well, you're
could
kind.
just duplicate him.
So many of my conservative friends get on me because I don't support term limits. And this is a reason that I won't
have term
support
limits
term
as long
limits.
as
I said,
That's
I
very
like the
kind,
idea of
Mike.
throwing the
Right.
scoundrel around.
Absolutely
but
not.
Don't throw the baby out the bathwater.
Thank you, Mike.
I'm telling you.
Well, you know, for me, I'm very strong in my faith, and to me, this is a God-given opportunity to serve His people. And I think the best way I can serve His people is to listen to His people, and to have opportunities like listening to you and Cameron and Mike, Sandra, and then also the people that will want to meet. And I mean, there are many people like me. I'm not sound like the Lone Ranger, but it's just a matter of when this country is hurting so bad, when my days have ended as a member of Congress, I'd like to think in a very small way that I will be seen as trying to do something positive.
Well, I know
Very
you
small.
will. I
Very
know you
small.
will.
Wise man said, make war after much wise counsel. So-
Well, I wish, Mike, we would. I was telling you earlier that I'm working on a bill that I think would, if we're not going to declare war, we can put it in the War Powers Act. That would trigger a debate 1 year later. That if you're still overseas and you're increasing the troop numbers and you don't know what the end point is, then the Congress would have to debate and vote up or down to stay or come out.
I like it.
good luck with that.
Thank you, Cameron. I think we think that working with Professor LaBelle at the University of Pittsburgh, and I met him through Dennis Kucinich, as a matter of fact. But he thinks it's got some
great.
merit, so we're gonna try to have it prepared by the 1st of April and put it in.
All right,
Wonderful.
Congress funds the military, you regulate the military, you're pretty much in charge of the military, and so if there's somewhere you don't want them to be, you should be able to pull them out.
Well, the one thing that's bad, and I don't want to talk too long, but too many times, it's just like when we have these appropriations bill to fund the military. Those who are pro stand there and say, well, do you want the troops to be there without bullets in their guns?
Yeah.
And that's so unfair. I mean,
I
that
don't want them to be there at all.
that's exactly right. You're exactly right. But
Absolutely. Can you speak to specifically, Congressman, and before we go, got a little time left, health care?
well, I voted for all the bills to repeal health care and all aspects of it. I want to be fair. The Republican Party believes in health care reform, but it's how do we go about health care reform?
Right.
I believe sincerely if we would take it, let's say many problems in health care, but let's say accessibility or affordability is the problem. Deal with that separately. Show the American people that we're listening to you, the American people.
Excuse me.
And put the bill in that would fix affordability. Pass that bill and then go to the second most serious problem. That's what you're going to see our party, my party, do in the next few weeks. They've already started holding hearings. They will probably put a couple of bills on the floor separate of each other that deal with some of the aspects of health care that need to be addressed.
That word comprehensive scared you?
Mike, I tell you the truth. When Ms. Pelosi said we have to pass the bill to read the bill, I think most of us are still trying to read the bill.
You're still
That's
trying
3
to
or
read
4
the
months
bill.
later, to tell you the truth.
Well,
As you know, you cannot, any bill that's introduced to change the law, you've got to have the law books beside you to see what the bill and where the bill fits into the book. You can't just pass a clean bill that does not impact current law. But anyway, I think our party will show there's a right way to try to fix it. And I don't know anybody in my party, doctors, nurses, or consumers that would not say we've got problems in health care that we need reform. But how are you going to reform it?
Thank you, Congressman.
Is your neighbor to the south seriously thinking about becoming a Republican, Mike McIntyre?
Well, there's been some conversation. I haven't talked to Mike in a while, but other than say hello, but I don't know.
Okay.
It's going to be very interesting because once they redraw the congressional districts, all of us will have an interest in how it looks.
Yeah. You might have 2 or 3 congressmen in your district.
You never know. I mean, anything can happen with redrawing the districts. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you,
anything
Congressman.
but actually geometric shapes.
Well, it's always been a great interest, Mel Watts district. I've heard so many members of Congress from other states saying, how in the world did they draw that district? But we in the South are still under the Voting Rights Act, so anything we do has to be pre-cleared by the Justice
They threw a
Department.
spider through a blender.
That's pretty good. I hadn't heard that, but
That's how they got it.
But thank you for letting me be on your show. And again,
Absolutely.
The invitation's open. Tri-County's being the morning show, Reflections of a Southerner. Anytime you'd like to come, you call and we'll just move everything out of the way.
well,
Door's always
maybe in
open.
May or June would be a good time to come back because then I know exactly, and you will know exactly which direction we're going.
Right.
Sounds great.
Thank you so much, and thank you for watching the morning show.
Absolutely.
Stay tuned for
Thank
Southern
you.
Gospel Praise Time.